Hey everybody, this is Cadroll Hunter, and today we're going to look at a huge lot of coins I bought, almost all of them at face value, including a whole bunch of rolls of old nickels, some Whitman albums, and some other goodies. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is James, and you're watching my channel Cadroll Hunter. And I recently visited with my new friend Tim. He is an antiques dealer. He also buys estates. And he called me up because he had a whole bunch of coins that he had picked up that he wanted to offload. I picked up 3 Whitman albums of Canadian small cents. Super excited about those. 3 with nickels. We're not going to look at those today because that's a lot to go through. I also picked up a couple of other folders with some good stuff that we'll look at. Face value for all of that. And there's a little pile of other things. I think we'll look at this another time. There's some old stuff. There's a few silver pieces in there. You can already see there's some goodies and some things in flips, including a mercury dime. We're just going to bypass that because today what we're going to focus on is this lot of nickels that came in. These are, I think, mostly from somebody's collection. You can see they're labeled 1968 nickel. Some of them, it's quite bizarre. 1964, 66, 65, 71. They've got the dates on them and how many. Some, yeah, I can see dates on there. 6 1960s and 34 1973s. Very strange. But there are things here labeled in the 40s. Some don't have labels at all. All sorts of crazy stuff. I did open up one of these rolls, this one in the back corner, and it did appear to be what it says on the wrapper. So I'm super stoked. What I'm also stoked about is the fact that some of them don't have anything on them. There's no markings, so I have no idea what's in here. So this isn't going to be your average ordinary coin roll hunt. These are not bank wrapped rolls or customer wrapped rolls that are being returned to the bank, just circulating coins. These are coins that a collector set aside. I don't know if they're going to be uncirculated or if they're just random assortment of dates. I have no idea, but I do expect to find some really cool and interesting things. I'm hoping we get a few surprises and maybe some really old stuff. Who knows? Anything goes. But I got a whole bunch, and as I said, I bought all of this at face value. Almost everything is going to be composed of nickel, I think, and so that already is worth a premium. But let's dig in. All right, I've separated them all out. We've got 46 rolls, and then in the bottom of that basket were 2 1947 Maple Leafs. So those are old coins, so that bodes well. I've grouped them together by the writing on them. All this has that red marker. I opened one of these up to see, but I'm pretty excited. There's lots of things in the 50s and the 60s. There's a whole roll there marked 1964, so we could find an extra waterline, maybe. Fingers crossed. Man, I hope I'm not jinxing it. There's one that says All USA, so I'm excited to see if we get some older, hopefully older American nickels, because that would be really cool. These next ones I think are all from the same person too. So these are likely from maybe different collectors that Tim might have come across at different times, and he had them all grouped together. These ones look to be also 40s to the 60s. There's some 70s. We're going to see if it is what they say they are. A lot of these are just going to be bound for the nickel jar unless they're in excellent condition. This group over here, they look like they're all sort of different. These two probably look like they're from the same person. Looks like, again, another roll of 1964 and maybe 68. A couple that just say pre-82. This one just $2.05, $2.05. And then these ones here don't have any markings at all. So who knows what's in there? I think we'll leave those to the end. And maybe we'll start over here with these guys. And we'll see what we find, if we find anything really interesting. So I'm going to start with this roll right here that's just in the front. It's already sort of pulled apart here. It says 10 1953, 14 1952, 11 1950, and for whatever reason, 5 maybe 1973 or 75. We'll see. We'll find out. You never know why people collect what they collect, if they're all in great shape or who knows. And it's just strange that they're all in sort of randomly grouped together like this, but we're going to find out in a moment what's going on. So here's what I'm seeing initially as I just unwrap this. First of all, you can see we've got some nickel and then a bunch of steel. And that would correspond to what's on the label, because in 52, 53, the nickels were chromium plated steel and they tended to rust. And we can see rust on the wrapper. These look like they've been in here for a very long time. And just by the looks of them, maybe not in great shape. So the elements might have gotten to them. They might have already been like this, but it looks like this will be true to the labeling on the wrapper. Okay, I'm going to separate them out. We'll take a peek. So this roll contained exactly what it said on the label. 10/1953. I checked them all. There are some varieties you can look for. It all has to do with the placement of the maple leaf, if it's near or far, and whether or not it's a shoulder fold or no shoulder fold. All of them are the common varieties. It had 14 1952s, 11 1950s, and 5 1973s. And the 73s aren't terrible, but they're not mint condition coins either. So you can see these are circulated 1973s. They're just going to go in the nickel jar. So I'm not certain why somebody would have held these back. They're not terrible looking coins, but there's really no value outside of essentially now just the nickel content. So I expect that we're probably going to see more of the same. So I think what I'll do is just sort out the ones that seem less interesting, and then the ones that are, say, the 64s or the All USA, the ones where we might find varieties or might find something cool. I'll save those just to the end of this group. I'll just kind of get the ones that likely aren't going to have anything interesting out of the way first. Well, this second roll is already going to deviate from the label because there's a 1937. It's got a dot on it. All 1937s have a dot like that. It is scratched up, but it's a nice looking coin. And so that's a nice surprise. It doesn't have that on the label. It says, I think, 54, 55, 58, 63. The rest look like they could be that, but that's our oldest find. The roll I just looked at was all circulated 1960s and 1961s, but there were 5 1961s that had die chips on the reverse legend. Here's an example where there's a die chip under the 6, one under the 1, and even one under the D. And these seem to be fairly common in 1961. I found a bunch with 6 and 1 or both, one or the other. So, but that's a cool little find, just finding under the scope. So we're slowly making our way through those rolls. We've only got a couple rolls of these red labeled ones left. And so far, I've just found a whole lot of circulated nickels, mostly from the 60s. In fact, from that first roll or first couple of rolls where we got some from the 50s, everything has been in the 60s with a handful of 70s, and they're all very circulated. I'm only bringing you in right now because I'm looking at some 1962s, and I've found a variety. I've got it up on my screen here. And this is a minor variety, and it's not all that significant. This is what could potentially be considered a 1962 double date. Basically, there's a little bit of doubling that you can see on the base of the 1, along the side of the 9, at the base of the 2. It's a little hard to see here. It's not as prominent as you might see in some examples. Like here's from the Coins in Canada website. There's an example where the doubling is pretty significant. They're calling this die deterioration doubling. I'd always thought that this was actually from a re-engraved date where you'd see these lines on the bottom. That's possible, but all of this extra doubling you see there is probably die deterioration. So that might be what we've got here, just a very early version of that. Not terribly significant. I'll set it aside. There's a little bit of a die or some kind of accumulation on this 6.2, which is kind of interesting. And these ones I've put down in these piles here are also some minor die chip type varieties. I'll take this 1966, for instance, put it under the scope. It's got a little bit of an accumulation here. I found a few here that are a little bit more significant. I'll just throw these under here. There's one with that same die chip. There's the one that's not quite as significant. There's one with called the eyes with one on both 6s, and I think this last one might be the same. If I can find it, let's see. Just minor. So not finding anything really crazy. I've still got a whole roll of 64s, so we'll see if there's an extra water line in there. And then I'm very curious to see what's in this. It's probably just a whole lot of circulated 60s nickels. If so, I'll be a bit disappointed. I was hoping there might be some older stuff here. So nothing doing with those 1964s, no extra water lines. I've got the last roll, which are these all USA. And what does interest me is that there are a couple of edges that are very different. And I'm hoping that these might be war nickels, silver war nickels, because those are ones that would look quite a bit different. So we'll just pull that one up before I look at the rest of them. And it is, look, there's a P mint mark above Monticello. It's pretty discolored, but this is going to be a 1942. I think I'll put that under the scope just to confirm that. There it is, 1942 Philadelphia. That's 35% silver. So that's going to make this whole thing pretty worthwhile. It's not in great shape. And there's another one that could be too. Let's take a peek and see. And that is too. That's a San Francisco. You can see that really clearly. San Francisco minted 1943. And let's take a peek at that one too. There it is. Pretty cool. So we got two war nickels, silver, 35% silver. Awesome. We're at the end of that roll. I'm bringing you in because we found a third silver war nickel in here. It's got a Philadelphia mint mark, and this one is a 1945. That's cool. It's a bit of a darker edge, but not as dark as those other ones. I didn't notice it right away, but that's really cool. That's three silver war nickels in there. Awesome. So most of those nickels were just 60s and 70s, but there were some older ones. Starting over here, there's a 1941. There were a couple 1953 Denvers, a 56 Denver, a 58 Denver, and a couple of 1959s, both Denver. There was a 1968 Denver that I don't have in my collection. I just never found one before. And then an interesting one, this is a 1973 Denver in pretty good shape, but you can see it's a little bit off center. There's really no rim on this side and the fairly thick rim on that side. I don't think it's worth anything in particular, but it's actually a pretty nice looking 1973 Denver and an interesting one anyhow. I'm going to clear away all of these. I'm going to tube them all up. Basically, I roll up all of my nickel composed nickels by year anyhow, and they're all sorted. So I'm going to do that, label them, put them away. I'm just holding them basically at the nickel bullion value. If nickel skyrockets, I'll be set for sure. I'm going to clear off the mat here so we can get to some of these rolls over here. I've been working my way through this second group of rolls, and everything is as advertised, as labeled, and more of the same, a lot of just circulated nickels. But this one is interesting because it looks like we're going to have some in the 40s, including some of those 1944 and 1945 victory nickels. And of course, when I see the nickels in here, I can see those steel, chromium-plated steel nickels. They've left some rust in the paper. They've been in here for a long time, I think. So they don't look like they're going to be in fantastic shape, but these are really hard to come by. So we'll take a peek at some of these. Actually, I'll grab one that looks maybe a little less rusty, or could be an illusion. But there's 1945. So certainly the edges are showing a bit of wear, but that's not a bad looking coin. It is certainly one that it'd be very hard to find in circulation. So I'll kind of tally these up and see if we've got what it says we've got. So we did get a big stack in 1944 and a big stack in 1945, but some of these are in pretty rough shape. Have a look at this one here. This is a 1945, and you can see a lot of that chromium plating has come right off, and then the steel, when it gets wet or gets the environment at it, it just starts to rust and disintegrate. So this is really common to see them in terrible shape like this. Harder to find them in uncirculated condition or in a really good condition, but in any case, that's still pretty cool to find some really old nickels. Unfortunately, some of them are kind of trashy. That's okay, though. And, well, we'll keep looking through and see what else we find. I just hope we find maybe a couple in really nice shape would be great. All right, now we're getting somewhere. This one was just labeled pre-1982, and I could see on the end it's got a 1944, so it's going to have some older stuff here, 1956. 52 chromium plated steel. There's a 1943 Tomback alloy victory nickel. But when I laid this down, as I'm looking towards the back, look at what I see. Those big letters, Canada. We got a King George V in here. And it's going to be a 1929. And that is incredibly cool. And that looks to be like in a high VG, a pretty decent coin. Awesome, always awesome to pick up a King George V at face value in a roll of nickels. That's incredible. Partway through that roll, we got a couple more, 1928, 1934. These are common years, but these are uncommon finds when it comes to just looking through rolls of nickels. These are awesome finds. Another roll just labeled $2.05. It was a mixed roll. It had some older stuff. A 1940 was the oldest Canadian, and it had a few older Americans, a 46, a 48, and a 57. Cool. And this very next roll was marked all American, and it looks to be the case, but I don't see any silver edges. So we'll see if there's anything from the 50s and earlier. Otherwise, I'll just keep on keeping on. So there were some older US ones in there. They're all Philadelphia minted. There's a 1940, 41, a 52, and a couple of 1959s. I'm in the last of the labeled rolls. This one says 1964, and the ender is in fact a 1964. So I'm going to scope all 40 of them to see if anyone might be the extra water line. It's unlikely. Somebody had to sort them all and separate out their 64s. They might have known what to look for, but hey, you never know. And I found one before in a roll of nickels from Monty, so it could happen again. I'm most of the way through that roll of 1964s, and I did find one really nice 1964, which is unusual because most of these are heavily circulated, but that is not why I'm bringing you in. I've got a 1964 under the scope, and when I look at it closely, check it out. It is, in fact, the extra waterline. We have that die crack by the designer's initials. This is the second 1964 extra waterline I've ever found. That is an incredible find. It's not in great shape. It's heavily circulated, but you can even see with the naked eye that what looks to be an extra waterline, that die crack that's not supposed to be there, that is an incredible find. Awesome. All right, well, we've finished all of the labeled rolls, and this video is going to get way too long if we just keep going. So we'll do a little bit of a recap. I think we're going to have to come back and look at the rest of these rolls. So we found silver war nickels. We found King George V. We found an extra waterline. What could possibly be in the rest of these rolls? Well, you'll have to stay tuned and find out, because I'm going to do a part 2 where we'll look at the rest of these together. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, Cadroll Hunter, please subscribe now. Give the video a like. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. I always appreciate it. We'll see you again next time. The sponsors of today's video are Lighthouse Canada and the Charlton Press. Lighthouse Canada is the leading supplier of high-quality numismatic supplies in Canada, and the Charlton Press is the leading publisher of coin and paper money catalogs and price guides for Canadian collectors. Go check out their online stores today and use the exclusive discount code CRH20 for 20% off all your purchases.